going to start our new series today called Big God. The Lord's been really dealing with me and speaking to me about the way that we view Him, our perspective on Him, our perspective on His ability to do things, His ability to fix things, His ability to handle situations. And it really, a lot of that comes down to how we view God. Do we view God as equal to our problems? Because if we only view God as equal to our problems, we got a perspective issue. Do we view God as less than our problems? Definitely some perspective issues. And so, anyway, I started thinking about what Scripture really kind of typifies that, and I started thinking about Job. You know, Job was in a messed up situation. Anybody ever read the whole book of Job? Long read, right? Anyway, but when you net everything out of it, Job was in a kind of a messed up situation. And it's really a weird situation because the Bible talks about that the sons of God, including that time Lucifer, showed up before the Father. And it said they presented themselves before God. And it said that God asked Lucifer, God asked Satan, said, have you considered my servant Job? Now, I'm glad God had confidence in Job. But I just kind of hope that God doesn't have that level of confidence in me to say, hey, you know, have you considered my servant Kelly? Ooh. Lord, have confidence in me, but please also have mercy. Anyway, have you considered my servant Job? He's righteous in all his ways. There's nobody like him. And so that sets in motion a chain of events. Lucifer says, if you do this, he's going to curse you to your face. If you do this, this, and this. And God says, no, he won't. And so there's these steps where he goes through all these crazy things. He really starts to suffer. He loses his servants. He loses his house. He loses his children. He loses all of his wealth. He loses his livestock. He loses even his health. He begins to being really bad. There's just all of these things that happen to Job. Lucifer's throwing this stuff at him, and Satan's throwing all this mess at him, and he never curses God. He never does that. But what he does is starts to get a little bit of an attitude. Now, I don't know about you, but I may have gotten a little bit of an attitude before in my life, and maybe even with God. And it's funny how God has a way of straightening those things out, helping you to see. And so this is where I want us to take up. So he's in all these painful things, all this series of events. He's in legitimate pain through no fault of his own, so he's hurting. Anybody ever here been hurt like just ongoing pain before? It's easy to talk out of that. You know what I mean? It's easy to kind of go out of that. Victoria broke a fingernail one time, it was morning, and she had these long, spiky fingernails. She likes long, spiky fingernails. And she popped one of those jokers off. And she was saying stuff I don't even know that she knew she was saying because the fingernail was 90 degrees and off the nail bed. It was nasty. And so she was talking out of her pain. I won't tell y'all exactly everything she said, but she wasn't happy, and so just what kind of came to mind. But things like that have happened to me too. You get a fishing hook stuck in and it won't come out. Your attention is on that fishing hook and not on the one who can fix the fishing hook. You know what I mean? Who can get the fishing hook out. It's easy to have your focus there. And that's where Job was at. Job was in anguish of soul. His soul was crying out. He was in anguish. And he tries to begin to justify himself in front of his friends. He begins to justify himself why this shouldn't be happening to him, how he doesn't have any issues, he's perfect in all his ways. He starts to just try to justify himself to his friends and even to God. And he puts himself in a position where he begins to wallow in his pain, and he comes close to accusing. And this is God's response. We'll start off with this response. Job 38, verse 1. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Now, if the Lord's going to answer you, I'd rather it be in the still small voice. Because when he answers out of the whirlwind, it's a whole different answer. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens counsel by words and without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I'll question you and you make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurement? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? When I made clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band? And prescribed limits for it and set bars and doors and said, thus far shall you come and no further. And here shall your proud waves be stayed. So the Lord looks at Job and says, hang on a minute. Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Oh, you think, well, let me ask you a question, Job. Where were you when I told the sea you can come this far and no more? What was the foundation of it laid? How did all this, when I laid the foundation of the earth, Job, where were you? In other words, Job, where is your perspective? It's if you read this, it's 3 chapters, not verses, 3 chapters of God saying, Job, where were you when I did this? Help me understand when I did this. You're a man of action. You're a man of war. Gird yourself up. Get yourself ready and answer me if you can. God's taking Job and he's helping not just Job, but his friends understand some things, putting some things in perspective. When I look at some things that have happened in my life over the years, some problems and some situations, and I began to do some of what Job has done and wallow in them, there's no good that can come of that. When I wallow in my own problems, my perspective becomes very limited. It becomes limited to the pig pen that I'm wallowing in. It becomes very limited to that. And it's hard to see God for who He is. And you know, here's the thing. God didn't just correct Job, but God did Job a favor. God reminded Job, you know, you do understand that the correction of God is not out of meanness or evilness or negativity towards you. It's mercy. The correction of God for my life, for your life, is mercy. It's to help us get things straight. And so help us get things in the right perspective. So for these 3 chapters, God corrects him and does this. At the end of it, the Bible says Job just said, hey, listen, here's the deal. I'm just going to put my hand over my mouth. Because I have nothing else constructive to say. Surely I'm an idiot. And so the best thing I can do is to say nothing. Sometimes it's better when God's dealing with us, just keep our mouth shut and listen. Just listen. He speaks in a multitude of ways. See, here's the deal. Job forgot some things. Job forgot who he was dealing with. He forgot who he was dealing with. His pain, his situation, the agony legitimately that he was in caused him to forget that the God that he served was bigger than the situation he was in. And that's really kind of where I'm going with this thing. He forgot who he was dealing with. He also forgot what God was capable of. He forgot that God was a big God. So I did the big God. He forgot that God was a big God. There's a perspective issue here. If the God that you serve is smaller than the problem that you have, you are serving the wrong God. That's just the truth. Because here's the deal. Our God is bigger than any problem that we have, any issue that we have, any sickness that we have, any disease that we have, any bad decision that we have, any jacked up decision that we have, any jacked up situation that we have created for ourselves. And I am especially good at creating jacked up situations for myself. I don't know about you. Maybe it's just me. But I don't think so. Job had forgotten what God was capable of. Job forgot how big his God was and how big his God is. He just forgot. And it's easy to forget. He forgot that God could fix his jacked up situation in a moment. He forgot that God, in the blink of an eye, could fix the situation. That God was not incapable of fixing the situation that he was in. You know, it's sad to say sometimes we do the same thing. We forget who God is. We forget the God that we serve. We forget what God has already done. I don't know about you, but God has done some amazing things in my life. He's brought me out of some crazy situations. He's delivered me out of some just really messed up situations. Some I created and some I had help with. But God's already delivered me from some really crazy situations in life. And if he did it then, he can do it now. But it's easy to forget that when we get mired down and wallowed down in a situation. We just get what I would call, from where I'm from, the mully grubs. You go dig worms. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I think I'll go dig me some worms. Big, long, stringy ones, short, little, fat ones. I think I'll go dig me some worms. It's easy to get down in the mud, and all that you can see is the negative, is the problems. So it's easy to see that. You know, we do that. We forget what he's already done for us sometimes. We forget what God is capable of in my life. You see, here's the thing. God isn't just able to do things for other people. God isn't just able to heal other people. God isn't just able to set other people free. God isn't able just to do crazy, amazing things for other people in other situations in other countries on the foreign mission field. He can do it for you today. He can do it for you. I used to have trouble believing for miracles from can I just be transparent with you? I used to have trouble believing for miracles for myself. I could believe for miracles for you all day long, but I'd have trouble believing for miracles for me. And finally, I came to the perspective that it's almost like God said, who do you think you are? Do you think you're special? That I am incapable of doing for you what I can do for somebody else? That's false humility. You know what that's called? It's called pride. That's what it's called. Who do you think you're that special that I can't fix your stuff and I can fix everybody else's? Yeah, you're not that big. So that's kind of the issue. We forget sometimes we can call on him for help, as opposed to just complaining and pitching a fit to him about our situation. We actually can call on him for help. We can call on him. He's bigger than any of our problems, all of our issues, all of our problems. Sometimes he's the only answer to problems in our life. You know, there's certain things, hey, the spark plugs need to be changed. Well, I can probably handle that. Some of y'all may need a miracle to handle that. I don't know. But I can handle that. That's an issue that I can handle. I don't really need God to fix that so much as thankful for the skill that he's given me to be able to fix it. But there's some situations that I've dug a hole so deep, I can't climb out of it myself. I need to be lifted out of it. There's some situations in our lives that are like that we need him. And it's not just a matter of laying in the bottom of a hole that we've dug for ourselves and complain about how cold and nasty the hole is. Sometimes, instead of just complaining about how cold and nasty the hole that I've dug for myself is, I should stop and think, why am I complaining to him about the hole? I kind of help with this. This is hey, Lord, you know what? Do you mind getting me out of this hole? I'm really not liking this hole anymore. And if you'll get me out of here, I'll do everything I can to fill it back in. Sometimes it's better to stop complaining about the hole that I'm in and ask the one who can get me out of the hole for help to get me out. But if we forget who he is, we forget how big a God he is, if we forget what he's capable of, we can't change our perspective from the bottom of the hole that we're in to see how big he is. Anyway, it's like Adam. Think of Adam. And I know I use this illustration some. Adam. So he's in the garden. Everything's going good. He and God are hanging out. they chill out in the cool of the day, and they have a good time, and he's got his wife Eve, and they mess around, and they decide to, Eve is deceived, eats the fruit, and she brings it to him, and he knowingly makes a sinful decision. Y'all want to know, y'all people always blame Eve for that, right? Well, Eve was deceived. Adam made a conscious decision. That was the problem. Adam wasn't doing what he was supposed to start with. The snake was in the garden. His job was to keep the snake out. So anyway, I'll just break that down for you. And so he gets there, and all of a sudden they realize they are naked. They're naked. They realize, oh no, I'm straight naked. I don't know. I'm straight up naked. Everybody can see my nakedness. And so I'm going to get a little fig leaf and try to sew my fig leaf and cover up my nakedness. See how stupid that is? Stupid, isn't it? So he gets and he hides. The Bible says that he goes and they hide in the bushes. And the father, God shows up and he says, Adam, where are you? He's hiding in the bushes. Adam, where are you? Number one, we serve an all-knowing God, so I really believe God knew where Adam was. He just needed Adam to know where Adam was. He needed Adam to understand, hey, Adam, look at the situation that you're in. Do you think you can fix this? What's always gotten me about that whole story is the fact that Adam and Eve were hiding from the only ones that potentially could fix the situation that they had created. A lot of times that's what we let ourselves do. We let our perspective and our view of the situation versus our view of God make us hide from the only one that can fix the situation. If our perspective is wrong, then we'll put ourselves in a place that's away from the one that can fix it. Where are you, Adam? Adam, where are you? Sometimes God, knowing where we are, just needs us to know where we're at. Isaiah 59 verse 1 says this. We forget how big he is. We forget what he can do. I love this scripture. Isaiah 59:1 says, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, or his ear dull that it cannot hear. The Lord's hand is not shortened. Shortened as in less than it used to be. As in less able, less strong, less capable than it used to be. The Lord's hand is not less than it used to be. You look at why do we tell Bible stories to kids? Why do we tell them about David and Goliath? Why do we tell them about parting of the Red Sea? Why do we tell them about how God delivered Israel out of slavery? Why do we tell them about the walls of Jericho falling? Why do we tell them about all of those things? Because if he could do it, he can do it. We need them to understand, and we need us to understand. Maybe we need to do a series on Bible studies, Bible stories. Get the kids' book from the back. Why? Because it builds our faith when we get a perspective of, listen, this is what he did. He's amazing. And if he did that then, his arm is not shorter now than it was. He's not some way less capable of fixing situations than he was before. He didn't lose any power. We have a saying sometimes when things happen that we don't expect, that are messed up situations, we'll look at each other and say, well, it didn't knock Jesus off the throne. He's still king. It didn't surprise him, and he didn't get knocked off his throne. He's still able to fix it. He's still able to do things. It's almost like when he asked Adam, when he's asking Adam these things, hey, gird yourself up like a man. You can answer me if you want. Do you think God is unable to gird himself up and come in like a man of war and save the day? Do you think he's less capable of that now? Do you think he's less capable of having the Lord show up as captain of the host and just take charge of the situation and handle it? Do you think he's less capable of that now than he was? He's absolutely, thoroughly, completely capable of it. I saw a movie one time, the guy said, don't let the suit fool you. Yeah. Don't let the suit fool you. I may be dressed up and you think I look all prim and proper, but I hadn't forgotten how to fight. I can go there if I need to. It's the same way with the Lord. If you have a perspective that he's a religious, high and mighty, big robes and white collars, and that's what the Father looks like, don't forget, he's got a suit of armor, and he will put it on. Don't let the suit fool you. He can handle business. He hadn't, if you think that you've seen everything, where I come from, we have a saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. Here, hold my water. Anyway, where I come from. Sorry. It was the truth anyway. He's not incapable. He hasn't diminished. And I guess that's the thing that bothers me. That's the thing that's gnawing on me right now, is that in some way I feel like we as a body of Christ, and this is what really eats on me, in our eyes we have diminished his excellence, his majesty, his strength, his power. In some way we have diminished that. When you start talking about, you start talking about, there was an age of miracles, and there was this, and there was a time when God did things, but he doesn't do that. Why? Is he less than he was? It's something about that gnaws on me. Sorry, pet peeve. It just really eats on me that we have somehow diminished him in our eyes. I think I used this illustration the other day, but there's a saying I hear in some of the circles that I roll in. I have a lot of friends in some crazy circles. Beware the old man in a profession where men die young. He's been around a long time. He's been through a whole lot. He went through a revolt in heaven and came out on top. His name is Most High. You know why his name is Most High? Because he's the Most High. Don't get it twisted. The God that we serve is much bigger than anything, any other name that can be named. And it's like we have been assuming and dropped down our perspective of him some. I don't know how that's not insulting to him. It's got to be. It's eating on me. I don't know. Maybe it's eating on me. It bothers me. It's like we think that he's less than he was. You think that my arm has been shortened? You think that you think I'm too old to hear you? Do you think that I can no longer hear your cry, or that I won't get up off of this throne and handle it? God is a big God. He's not a little g. He's a big G. You beat me to it. He's the OG. Don't mess with him. You hadn't seen anything yet. You think I can't hear you? You think I'm too old to make it happen? No. When did we decide? When did we decide to quit asking him for help? When did we decide that we would handle it on our own? When did we get to the point that we're at the bottom of the pit and the pit looks bigger than the God that we serve? When did we get there? What happened? Just asking this hypothetically, you understand? Because I know there's nobody in this room that would ever get there. I know there's nobody in this room that's ever been there. So it's not me. I haven't done that. Why? Because of some circumstances? Did we stop asking God for help and expecting him to do it because of some circumstances? Because of some problem? Because some bully's pushing you around? But what happened? It's almost like, I feel like the Lord's at the place with us. He's looking at us and he's doing us a favor. He's not angry. See, God's not angry with us anymore. But he's doing us a favor. Hey, Joe, where were you? It's like he wants to ask, hey, in my heart, it's like he wants to ask, hey, church, where were you when I did all these magnificent things, these amazing things? Have you forgotten the God that you serve? Have you forgotten? Do you really think that I'm less than I was? Isaiah 55, verse 6 says this, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord. Let the unrighteous man forsake his thoughts. let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain and the snow comes down from heaven, and do not return there, but water the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower, bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, for it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it. Why is it important how we perceive God? Because the way that we perceive God is a limiting factor for God. You think about Jesus when he went into his own hometown. The Bible says he couldn't do many miracles there because of their unbelief. He healed a few people, but he couldn't do the miraculous things there. Why? Because they were familiar with him. Familiarity breeds contempt. They didn't see him for who he was. See, our lack of seeing God for who he is shows a lack of faith. That's the issue. It's a limiting factor. It's deed and thought. You see, deed comes out of thought. I debated whether or not to use this, but I'm going to use it anyway. Some of you will get this, some of you won't. There's this concept called the OODA loop. Some of you have heard it, some of you haven't. There's this concept called the OODA loop. It was invented by a U.S. Air Force colonel named John Boyd. And what it was a way to think about things, a way to have a perspective on things, and a way to think in combat, to be able to not be frozen, to not be set in a place and not be able to function. I think sometimes believers are set in a place where they can't function. And so it's combat thinking. Here's what OODA stands for. It's an abbreviation. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. You see, what you observe puts you in a place that you orient yourself, orient your perspective, orient your thinking, orient your perspective and preparation towards what a decision is that you're going to act on. And then it repeats itself. After you've acted, then you observe and you orient yourself again so that you can decide, make a good decision, and act. It's called the OODA loop. He was a fighter pilot, and he invented this way of thinking so that pilots could make quick decisions, so they can make split-second decisions. Because the first one to a decision in a fighter pilot situation, in a dogfight, is the one that wins. And so he invented this, and this has been applied into business. This has been applied in many other policing situations, military situations, just all kind. It's a tool that's been applied all across the board, and I believe it can apply to us too, because what we observe really ends up being our perspective. Your perspective is what puts you in a situation that you orient yourself. So if my perspective on God is that he's smaller than the situation that I perceive myself in, if I see him that way, then I'm going to orient myself thinking that he's not enough to help me. I'm going to orient myself in a defensive posture to run because I think God is less than what I need him to be. But if my right thinking sees God in the light that he needs to be seen in, then I'm willing to stand up and fight because I know he's not even backing me up. I'm just here with him. It's like being the little brother in a fight knowing that big brother's got your back. It's a lot easier to fight in a situation where you know that you got backup that's got you. It's not going to let it go too far. It's the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. The first one to a right decision wins. Our perspective and our decision making gets all jacked up when we don't see God as a big God. When we don't see God in the light that he needs to be seen in. When we take the time to see God for all that he is, all that he's done, and all that he can do, we're right on track for a breakthrough. You need a breakthrough in your life? You need some things to change in your life? You need to be healed in your life? You need some situations to not be what they are. Are you in a pit? You need to get out. The first step is to change our perspective. The first step is to get my eyes off the bottom of the pit and put my eyes in the right place. To begin to view God and remember God and dwell on God and think about God for all that He is, all that He can do. By the way, when Job got his perspective straight and his mouth shut, when he stopped complaining and looked up, everything changed. God's perspective on him changed immediately. And not only did God's perspective on him change, God dealt with all those people that were accusing him and making fun and all of this. They had to come to Job for forgiveness. Job had to pray for them in order for them to be healed and set free. When Job straightened out his perspective, everything else straightened out too. What am I saying? It pays to get your view of a big God right. 5 practical points. 5 practical points. Here's the first point. First, very practical point. You ready? Lift up your head. You can't see him down there. He's not down here. Lift your head up. He's not down here in the bottom of the pit. So lift up your head. Lift your perspective. Lift your vision. That's number 1. Lift up your head. If you walk around with your head hung down all the time, you can't see him. He's not down there. It's not there. So the first thing is lift up your head. He's not down there. The second practical point is I need to allow my pain to push me to God instead of away from God, like Adam. If Adam had let his situation push him to God, he could have gotten it handled a lot quicker. If I allow my pain to push me to God, I'll be much better off than if I allow my pain and my disappointment and my issues in life to push me away from God. You know, some people are great with God until the first situation happens, and then they run away. Why? Because there are people that let them have their pain push them away from God and not to God. Me, I'm not that intelligent, and so I'm pretty quick to figure out He's my only hope. Number 3, we need to remember the things He has done for us and not just dwell on the things that haven't happened yet. We need to remember the things that He has done. If you think back, I'll bet you can think of some amazing things that God has done for you. Remember that. Dwell on that stuff. Let that stuff build up your faith. Number 4, don't sell God short. Don't sell Him short. His arm is plenty long enough to reach to the bottom of whatever pit you're in. Don't sell God short. And the last thing is we need to call on Him. He can hear us. His ear's not shut up. His ear's not closed off to you. We need to call out to Him. He can hear us. He's a big God.